We teach kids so many things: to stop, drop, and roll in a fire, how to cross a street, how to stay safe on the internet. We don't always remember to teach them how to be safe with dogs.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast. This is episode number 314, and I hope you're having a good week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. Here in Tennessee, winter has come in full force as I'm recording this intro. We've had a pretty big snow here, which is not too terribly unusual, but to get one this size is pretty significant for us. And then also just the cold temperatures. We don't get in the single digits here in Tennessee. It's very, very rare that happens. So I'm hunkered down at home and working from home and recording from there. And so just kind of enjoying a different pace for a snowy day. I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest for this particular episode, Stefani Cohen. And Stefani I really enjoyed my conversation with her and just really thinking about a very unique niche that she has created for herself in her practice. Stefani is in private practice up in Westchester County, New York. And she has written a book called Overcoming Your Child's Fear of Dogs. And it's a guide for parents and therapists and helping them teach children that are afraid of animals or afraid of dogs in particular how to overcome that. And she sent me a copy of her book, and I was really impressed with the detail that she put into it. One of the things for me, I grew up around, having pets and having dogs and cats and that sort of thing. I've got 2 cats of my own now. And one of the things that I think we take for granted for those of us that like animals and have pets is that recognizing that there are folks that have some fears around that, particularly children. And so Stephanie and I talk about that and really how she developed her passion for this particular niche and how she's kind of put some things together that I think you as a therapist or those folks that are therapists are going to find helpful. So I'm looking forward to you hearing my conversation with Stefani. Before we get to that, though, a few things I'd like to let you know about. One is I've got a friend of mine, and you've heard me talk about this on other episodes. My friend Ashley has started an online store that I think you ought to take a look at. It's called Mental Health Wear Tennessee, or TN. And what she has done is she has really taken her passion for helping people that have struggled with mental health issues and addiction issues and put it into some clothing and some things that she thinks people will find fun to have or just important to them. There are inspirational sayings on some of the shirts. There's also a whole section of shirts and sweatshirts that are very specific to mental health providers. So if you're looking for something to kind of promote your pride in your job, she's got some great t-shirts and sweatshirts available. So like LCSW shirts and LMFT shirts, LPC shirts, that sort of thing. So be sure to check it out. And if you go over to mentalhealthwaretn.com, you can check out the store. And also, she's worked out a deal for those listeners that are listening to this podcast. If you'll use the promo code or the coupon code, just POT24, you can get 25% off your first order through her online store. She really does have some neat stuff, and she's constantly adding to it and really trying to build out this neat thing for herself, and also just to help in our professions, and also be an inspiration to those folks that are struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues. So be sure and check it out, mentalhealthwaretn.com, and you'll find a link here in the show notes and the show summary as well. And also, before we get to my conversation with Stefani, I'd love for you to hear more about TherapyNotes. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, you can find out more about that EHR. But before we get to my conversation with Stefani, I'd love for you to hear from one of the other members of the Psychcraft Network, along with some words from TherapyNotes.
Hi, I'm Whitney Owens. If you don't know me, I am the person behind the Wise Practice podcast, which is part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. I am so proud to be a part of this network, along with my good friend, Gordon Brewer, who's doing such amazing work on helping people on their practice journey. If you haven't discovered the Wise Practice podcast yet, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'd love for you to join us as we explore how to grow a faith-based practice that brings you the income you need and the lifestyle you want. Be sure to check out the podcast and other helpful information at whitneyowens.com.
Have you ever wished your private practice could run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine? Well, look no further, because TherapyNotes is here to revolutionize your practice. TherapyNotes is the complete practice management system you've been dreaming of. With everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with clients remotely, create rich documentation, and handle insurance billing, it's your secret weapon for a smoother practice. And the best part? It's accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Yep, even on the go. Imagine having more time for what truly matters, your clients. It's like having an extra set of hands, but digital. And here's the kicker. It's the very EHR Gordon relies on in his own practice. So, you know it's the real deal. Say goodbye to paperwork nightmares and hello to more time and better quality care. Check out TherapyNotes today at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Oh, and don't forget to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. That's practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes with the promo code GORDON. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so glad for you to get to know today Stefani Cohen. Welcome, Stefani. Stefani is a social worker up in New York in Westchester County, and she had reached out to me about her book, Overcoming a Child's Fear of Dogs. But as I start with everyone, Stefani, why don't you tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Sure. So I am a licensed clinical social worker up here in New York, and been a lifelong animal lover and had lots of animals over the years. And when my daughter Becky was born, long time ago, but she was about 5, and out of the blue, she announced that she was afraid of dogs and wasn't going to grandma's anymore and wouldn't go on play dates. And honestly, I was blindsided. Nothing had happened to her that I knew about, and I didn't understand her fear. And I was frustrated by it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there really were no resources available, and everybody just kind of thought she was being silly. But I knew she wasn't. She truly was panicked. And my sister, Kathy Malkin, who contributed to the book, had a wonderful dog, well-trained, named Casey. And we kind of synchronistically did a little bit of exposure therapy with Becky and Casey. And we had Casey leashed, and Becky would ask Casey to sit, and it was a very controlled, safe environment. And little by little, Becky saw she was safe with Casey, and eventually it generalized to other dogs. And okay, so that was that. We felt really good about it. And then as a therapist and dog lover, I kind of started to incorporate my dogs into some sessions. And if someone was afraid of a dog, I kind of did a little exposure therapy. And then little by little, I started to think, you know what? I have something here. And so what I realized was I can only help one person at a time. And I really want to help as many people as possible. So over about 2 years and during the pandemic, I was able to get this book published.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Stephanie was gracious enough to send me a copy of the book, and I was going through it earlier this week, and it is packed full of worksheets and exercises and that sort of thing that I think most therapists would find really helpful, particularly working with children, just around. Probably this would translate for the fear of any animals or of that sort that are pets and that kind of thing. So
100%.
So you want to maybe talk about a little bit of your method in the book, and just, I know most of us are very familiar with exposure therapy and kind of what that encompasses, but I'm sure that there's much more to it than that.
Right. And just like a little side note, if I was going to go back and give my book a new title, I probably wouldn't put that this was specifically for parents, because it actually is useful for therapists, dog trainers, grandmas, anybody who loves dogs and knows someone who is afraid. So I think there are two important things that as therapists we all know. We're afraid of things we don't understand. So I have a huge educational component, helping people understand dogs, how they communicate. And I think a lot of parents these days, we teach kids so many things: to stop, drop, and roll in a fire, how to cross a street, how to stay safe on the internet. We don't always remember to teach them how to be safe with dogs. So there's an educational component. I do pictures of dogs, and I try to help people see what the dog is communicating with their body, things like that. And that gives a better understanding. So you can know when it's safe to interact with the dog and when you should really give the dog some space and stay away. The other piece of this is that being afraid is feeling out of control. So we try to help the person feel more in control. And that starts with a basic level of trust, that I ensure the person that they will not be forced to do anything they don't want to do. I will nudge and coach and cheerlead to try to get them out of their comfort zone, but they absolutely will not be forced into doing something they don't feel ready for. Just like a little anecdote from my practice, Taylor was age 7, was afraid of dogs. And our first session, she stood next to her car, and myself and the therapy dog team was 15 feet away on a blanket. And we spent the whole 45 minutes with Taylor observing the dog. That's as much as she could do. And that was okay. So, we scaffold, we go slowly, the whole thing. And every kid is different.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, it's, as you were describing that, I think for those of us that were maybe raised around dogs or had dogs or really any pet. And as a matter of fact, I just noticed one of my
I
cats
just saw too.
just popped in here. So she might decide to join us here. But, I think we take it for granted that just people kind of know instinctually how to be around animals
Mhm.
and pets.
Mhm.
Um, I think about, one thing that comes to mind for me is that I've never really been around horses much, but I know when I've been around horses, they can seem, maybe it's not a great comparison, but they can seem a bit intimidating to me.
Sure.
And so, but I know enough about animals and that sort of thing and get curious and all that kind of thing. But do you find that helping children in particular get curious about their fear, is that something that's helpful?
Yes, that's a really good point. Yes. So I kind of say we're going to be detectives. And when you look at the dog, Nico, for example, who's a great little Bernedoodle, how do you think Nico is feeling? And when children are really scared, they just really want the dog to stay perfectly still, which I
Mm-hmm.
tell them is impossible because the dog is alive. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
alive, you move. So if Nico maybe turns his head to look back to see who's petting him, exactly to your point, we'll say, why do you think Nico is doing that? And sometimes they know, and it's so we help them understand. A couple of things that I think are very important that I want to mention are my goal here is not to have every child interact with a dog. I mean, I would love that if it can be done safely and they're comfortable, but dogs are everywhere and it's impossible to live a full life by avoiding dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So, learning to coexist and know how to kind of behave with them is very important. I'm sure you'll
Mm-hmm.
understand that whole fight or flight thing kicks in. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're afraid of a dog, you may want to run. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I tell people. If you run, dogs are hardwired to chase you. So we
Yes.
act so we practice standing still,
Uh-huh.
crossing arms and turning sideways. Because in dog language, that's telling the dog, I'm not interested, keep moving.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
helps to give a plan and to help them feel a little bit in control. They know what to do.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting. And another thought that comes to me for people or children that have never been around dogs or pets for that matter, of just knowing how to read a pet, of whether or
Mm.
not, the pet is glad to see you or not glad to see you, whether the pet's feeling playful or just curious or all
Mhm.
of those kinds of things. It is a bit like maybe somebody that might be on the autism spectrum, them learning how to read people. Um,
Great
yeah,
comparison. Yes.
yeah. And so I know with people that I have friends and people that I've worked with over the years that on the autism spectrum, they've had to learn to be much more observant of what's going on with
Mm.
other people because they don't just intuitively pick it up. And I'm wondering, if there are some children that maybe just have not learned how to intuitively pick up on, dog's languages. I think there's something hardwired in us as humans and dogs that helps us communicate at a level that, we don't quite understand.
Yes, I think so. And I think as therapists, that part of us may be finally developed. But I so I have 4 grandchildren now, and I'm very conscious of helping them see what my dog Winnie is telling them. The 2-year-old is the most interested,
Mm-hmm.
and Winnie very often will say, by walking away, I've had enough, I'm not interested. And
Yeah.
I need to help Remy understand what Winnie's saying. And I think
Yeah.
there's a big level of respect also, the same way we have to be help to respect people. We need to respect what animals are telling us. And that's really important with dogs, because if you don't respect them, you might get bit.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your way of teaching kids about, I know one of the things with any animal, both dogs and cats is that when they're greeting somebody for the first time, they have to use their sense of smell. That's how they
Yes.
how they how they how they check things out. And so
Right.
how is it that you teach that to children so that they're not afraid?
Well, it's kind of difficult because it used to, the thinking, and I'm not a dog trainer, I want to be clear about that. But the thinking used to be that you would extend your hand and kind of put it near the dog's muzzle and the dog would smell you. The thinking now is you keep your hands by your side, the dog approaches you if they want to interact, they sniff, and then they decide if they want to interact or not. If you are afraid of dogs, a dog approaching you is going to be terrifying. So in the exposure therapy with therapy dogs who are well trained and always, always, always on leash, we practice the child getting used to the dog. And I actually, once they reach this level, I sometimes will throw treats at the child's foot and the dog will come up and whatever. But that can feel very scary. Otherwise, dogs and all animals pick up on our energy. So if we can remain calm, lots of times that helps the dog remain calm.
Right.
But
Yeah. Because
go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was going to say, I would think that a dog would sense immediately if someone's afraid of them. And so that would probably, I'm guessing, put the dog on guard as well. And so then you've got that whole interaction to deal with.
Yeah, that's tricky because if you tell a 6-year-old, if the dog knows you're afraid, that's going to raise the kid's fear in a way. So we practice mindfulness, we do deep breathing. And again, we work with very safe, dependable dogs. And I think one thing that I also want to make sure I mention, and a lot of people don't think about it, even though to me, now that I think about it, it seems like a no-brainer. When you're going to meet a dog for the first time, if you're going on a play date or something, I think it's perfectly okay to ask the owner to come outside with the dog on leash, so the dog can see you and you can see the dog in a less emotionally charged environment. Because most dogs are very excited when someone comes to their home. I do this with my dog. We go out, we say hello, and then we come back in. And for kids who are afraid, I always try to remind their parents it's okay to ask for that, and it can make a big difference.
Yeah, because a lot of dogs are jumpers, and that could be just terrifying for a child, especially, I would think. Yeah.
I don't like to be jumped on. I'm not afraid, but I don't enjoy it.
You're right.
I also tell kids that we help them have good manners, please and thank you and excuse me. But it's really important that dogs have manners too. And that means not jumping, or if they are going to jump, then somebody needs to leash them and prevent the jumping.
Right.
But a lot of people don't do that.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing that I know. I have had friends where I go to their house and immediately the dog is just really glad to see you. And it just, and I grew up around dogs, so I'm not afraid of dogs and know what's happening and whatever. But after a while, it just gets kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, well, to change gears a little bit, Stefani, I know that you've done a lot of work just looking at your bio. You've done a lot of work with parents. Are there other areas that you work in as far as with helping parents and parenting?
Yeah. So a lot of positive parenting. Parents contact me if there are some behavioral issues or some tension in the home. And so I do a lot of that kind of behavioral positive parenting stuff with parents. The anxiety piece, anxious parents and anxious children I think actually the fear of dogs was an offshoot of that.
Yes.
But my real passion is helping people who are afraid of dogs. The other work is like my bread and butter, but this is my passion.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I know early in my career, I worked for an organization. It was a nonprofit that worked with at-risk children and youth. And I always felt, and I know work with children is important, but I've always felt that you could make a bigger impact if you could work with the parents around their
1000%.
parenting rather than just working specifically with the kid on their behaviors. Because if nothing changes in the home, then everything that you do in a session with a kid is not going to really have any sticking power.
Yeah, I agree with that 1000%. It's true. And sometimes small changes that parents make, even just the wording of, if you don't put your shoes on, you can't watch TV, to children who are ready for school can watch TV. Sometimes just very subtle things like that can make a tremendous difference, as you know.
Right. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and find your book and all of that sort of thing.
Sure. So the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and you can I'm perfectly happy to have a direct email, which is, you have to spell my name right though. Stefani is STEFANICOHENLCSW@gmail.com. I offer a 15-minute free phone call to kind of help you start your journey facing the fear of dogs. People contact me really from all over the world, and I can't be there to help, but I can consult and guide. And then my website is overcomefearofdogs.com.
All right. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary for people to find that easily. So, well, Stefani, I enjoyed getting to know you, and hopefully we can talk again before long. Well, a big thanks to Stefani for being on the podcast, and be sure and check out her book, Overcoming Your Child's Fear of Dogs. And you can find links here in the show notes and the show summary to get to that. And also you can find it anywhere you buy books, like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, that sort of thing. So be sure and check it out. And also be sure and check out the online store that I mentioned, mentalhealthwaretn.com. And again, as a reminder, if you'll use the coupon code or the promo code, just POT24, you can get 25% off your first order. So be sure and check it out. It's some pretty cool stuff there. And also a big thanks to TherapyNotes for being the sponsor of the podcast. You can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, and be sure and use the promo code just Gordon, GORDON, to try them out for 2 months for free. And I'm so glad that they've are a sponsor, and so glad that they're part of this journey with me. That they are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and couldn't operate without them. So be sure and check them out. And be sure to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. Got a lot of great guests lined up for our future episodes, and I'm so glad you're with me on this journey. And take care and stay warm during this month and this cold weather we're having. So take care, folks. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.